All right, so quick review from last time. Recall we have our competitive equilibrium. Let's just mentally go through these different parts. We've got our marginal cost curve for us as the producer. As we produce more and more, our costs may decrease, but at some point the cost is going to increase. We also have the very important marginal revenue curve, which is a flat line for us. Now, what is marginal revenue? Yeah, the amount we make, also known as... Yes. Yeah. No, also known as... Marginal revenue is the same as... Starts with P. No, you're missing something big. I've invested so much time in this, I have to wait for you to get it now. This starts with PR. PRI. Price. Right, marginal revenue is price. Okay, so that's how much we're going to charge for this product. And how is price determined?
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. All right, so as a firm and a perfectly competitive firm, we are a price taker. This is set for us, and we're going to produce all the way up until marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So if it costs us just a little bit less than the price, why not? 1 penny less, then we get an extra penny profit.
So when you relate that to supply and demand, which is which?
Oh, okay. So the marginal cost curve, good question, is the supply curve. So suppliers, firms are going to produce along this line until it costs too much. Until, as wherever marginal revenue is, we will produce along the marginal cost curve. And you're going to add your marginal cost curve to Luke's marginal cost curve, and that's going to be the industry supply curve. The price is determined by the supply and demand. All right. So hopefully for you, your average total cost will be less than the price, and you will be making a profit, an economic profit, which is above an accounting profit. What happens when other competitors, other people who are not in this industry, see that profit? See you making a profit?
They want it.
They want it themselves, so they get in the industry. This supply curve gets pushed to the right. Price gets driven down. Additionally, see how this average total cost curve, I guess we're not quite producing where that is a minimum, but suppliers will produce where the average total cost is at a minimum. The reason for that is if in the long run they can build a larger plant and produce the perfect, if they have the economies of scale, they'll produce a larger plant. Actually, let me skip ahead. So here we have average total cost, short-term curves, the red ones. All right, if we can build a larger plant, then we will do so and we will produce for a lower cost, and that will drive the price down. If our plant is too big, then either we or someone else will produce a smaller plant, and they'll produce where average total cost is lower. They'll drive the price down. So in the long run, marginal cost will still equal marginal revenue. Also, long-term average cost will be at a minimum. Perfect competition. Any questions on that? All right, let's move on to monopoly. Like I said, it's great if you are the monopolist, not so great for everyone else. Single seller, one seller, a unique product, no one else can sell it, no one else has it, and impossible to enter the market. So we all know what a single seller is, one person, one firm, unique product. For some reason, no one else can replicate this product. What are some reasons why no one else can get into this market and replicate the product? Any ideas? Patents, yes. Economies of scale. It just takes a huge factory to produce even the first unit. What else? Legal barriers. Okay, maybe the phone company is protected. Maybe the government says it's better for everyone if we protect this phone company and have them be the only supplier. Or you own some vital resource. All right. First thing I want to say about monopoly is this interesting phenomenon called a natural monopoly. This happens when the industry long-run average cost of production declines throughout the entire market. So what does that mean? Let's go to the next slide and look at this graph. We can see if we have a graph of long-run average cost, and we have quantity output on the horizontal axis, cost on the vertical axis. As more and more units are produced, the cost gets lower and lower. So this might be some product that requires a lot of overhead to even produce one unit, and as you produce more and more of it, the cost gets lower and lower. So what happens if, suppose, Stephanie sets up shop and she's producing this product, and she builds a bigger and bigger and bigger factory. As she gets bigger and bigger, her costs get lower. So anyone who's thinking about getting in this industry and competing with her has to start at the very beginning. Has to start with a huge factory, high long-run average costs. So Stephanie has a natural monopoly. She produces at a long-run average cost, lower than everyone else. All right. So that's natural monopoly. Let's now throw out this idea that a monopolist is a price maker. Now remember we said in perfect competition, a firm is a price taker. In perfect competition, the price is established with supply and demand, and the firm has no control over that price. But price maker, why is a monopolist a price maker?
They determine what they're going to charge.
Well, yes, because they're the only ones who make the product. They face the entire industry demand curve. So this is the industry demand curve, and the monopolist can say, well, how much demand are we going to satisfy? Are we going to produce this much? Well, we'll set the price here. Are we going to produce this much? We'll set the price here. Are we going to restrict price? Well, we'll set the price really, really high. They face the entire industry demand curve, and their marginal revenue curve is calculated based on the demand curve, and it is slanted slightly lower in this fashion. We're going to talk about that marginal revenue curve for a few minutes here, just to make sure we're clear on it. This marginal revenue is derived from the demand curve, and it's just a little bit lower mathematically, or slanted, whatever it is, different angle. The reason for that is, suppose you're going to sell one unit. All right, you can sell it for $150 to one person, and then you get a marginal revenue of $150. But if you want to sell 2 units, you have to go down to, whatever, $135, but you have to sell both units, the first unit and the second unit, for $135. So you're losing revenue, so to speak, on the first unit by selling an additional unit. So your marginal revenue declines with each additional unit you sell. You're driving your average price per unit down. Does that make sense? All right. Kind of. So the important thing is that the marginal revenue curve is derived from the demand curve. And as you sell more units, you're just driving your average cost down. Your average price down, excuse me. Actually, you know what? Let's jump ahead to an interesting concept that I think will shed some light on this. It is called price discrimination. Price discrimination is when a firm sells a product at a different price to every single person. So I'm going to sell to the people in this room, for example, at the price you're willing to pay. And I'm going to sell a different price to Crystal because she's willing to pay more than Lonnie, I'm going to sell a different price to you because you're not willing to pay as much as either of those two. So, yeah. So suppose Crystal really, really likes this product. She's willing to pay $150 for it. Andres is like, yeah, I like this product, not as much as Crystal. I'll pay this much for it. Whatever Luke's like, I'll pay this much for it, and so on and so forth. What if I were able to charge you each the amount that you wanted to pay for it? Would that be cool? For me, right? That would be great for me if I could price discriminate against all, on all of you. If that were the case, then this demand curve would be my marginal revenue curve. We could skip the red curve. This demand and marginal revenue would be the exact same thing. So, actually, I'm not sure if that math is right. I guess, it would. So I would get 150 for this unit, 135 additional units. For every additional unit I sell, I get the full price that you're willing to pay. But what sucks about not being able to price discriminate is if I go all the way down to the price that Luke's willing to pay, say here, I have to give you all that same price. So my revenue for marginal revenue for going all the way to 6 units is decreasing. Not only am I getting less revenue because the people down here are willing to pay less, but I'm getting less revenue because I have to sell it for the people who are willing to pay more. I have to sell to them for less.
You have to, if you're a monopoly, why do you have to sell it for that price? People just won't buy.
Okay, so if I could price discriminate, I would. Right? If there's a way I could do it, I would. Maybe I could. Amazon did this, and they got some heat for doing this in the early years. They charged more for consumers who they thought would pay more based on their buying habits, and they charged less for people who wouldn't charge less. I think there was also a famous example of a soft drink machine that automatically was programmed to charge more on hot days. So when the temperature went up, you pay $1.25 for the soda. When the temperature goes down, you only pay $1 for it. We'll talk later about how universities use price discrimination. They charge students with better grades, more attractive candidates. They charge them less for education than they do for students who, don't have as many opportunities.
Or football heroes.
Yeah, we can talk about that. But the clearest example, and we don't even think of this as a bad thing, but it is price discrimination, is they are charging more for the students who, for the average students, and they are charging less to the scholarship students. They are price discriminating. And of course, if you're the monopolist, why wouldn't you want to do that? So, price discrimination, if you're a monopolist, is a good thing. If you're everyone else, probably not such a good thing unless you can make the argument that, well, by discriminating on price, you're letting some people use the product or service at a more affordable price. Okay, so price discrimination, this is your marginal revenue and demand curve are the same thing. But if you can't price discriminate, why does your marginal revenue decrease faster than your demand curve? Anyone?
Because the cost associated with having to sell more.
With that cost, it's that you have to charge less for everyone. Because the people who are willing to pay more, the average students, you have to give them the same price as you give the exceptional students. Same thing Amazon got into where they were trying to charge people more because they thought they would pay more. They got a lot of bad publicity for that. And they said, okay, we have to charge the same price for everyone. So we cannot take advantage of those people who are willing to pay the really high price. That's the way to put it. Unfortunately, we cannot take advantage of people who are willing to pay their high price. So our marginal revenue curve goes down faster. We good on that? There's an example, I think a couple slides down, slide number 17. This is just a worked out example of that concept. And you can reflect back on that while you're going over this material. All right, so we got marginal revenue, we've got the demand curve for a monopolist. Now, let's reflect. The monopolist is a price maker. In perfect competition, the firm is a price taker, which means the firm faces a flat demand curve. You cannot sell at a higher price, you cannot sell at a lower price, you have to sell at the market price if you are a firm in perfect competition. Market supply, market demand determines the equilibrium price. You face a flat demand curve in perfect competition. As a monopolist, you face a downward sloping demand curve. All right. So that's what that slide says. That is the example of how marginal revenue decreases as you sell more units, because unfortunately you can't take advantage of people who want to pay really high prices. Alright, this is just some calculations of how marginal revenue decreases. Now, let's ask the question of how much does a monopolist produce? So a monopolist gets to choose two things: how much they're going to produce, and by extension, they choose how much they will charge. So how do they decide? Well, they want to maximize profits. So they could use the total revenue minus total cost. Whatever makes that the highest would give them the max profit. The thing we'll talk about more is marginal revenue equals marginal cost method. The exact same thing we talked about last time in perfect competition. You're going to produce, if it costs you just a little bit less than the revenue you'll get, that leaves a little bit of profit. So why not produce all the way up until our marginal revenue equals marginal cost? All right, so let's look at this graph. I know this may be a little hard to, so David's got his book, and you can see all of these in the book. So if you're not able to see it perfectly, I know some of these graphs I had to condense a little bit to get them on the slide, but you should be able to double check in your book as necessary. But for now, let's go through this graph. Remember, we've got the demand curve where the monopolist faces the whole industry demand curve. Marginal revenue curve is slanted steeper, derived from the demand curve. And monopolist still has a marginal cost curve. As she or he is producing more and more, costs may go down temporarily, but they're going to go up at some point as economies of scale diminish. Producing, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, is the decision that maximizes profit. Hopefully, the average costs will be below the price. Let's see, so you're going to produce, so price would be then at point A, and for everyone, not just the people who are willing to pay that much. And hopefully your average total cost would be below that, and you will turn a profit. Does that make sense? So this is the monopolist profit maximization in the short run, using the same decision, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Yes?
The demand curve that is there,
yes.
Is that the one that's the marginal revenue curve on the slide we were looking at before?
In perfect competition?
In monopoly.
Okay, the slide we were looking at before.
Like, I just want to know if it's...
Yeah, this was the demand, and this is the marginal revenue curve. This is the one we spent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's these two.
It's
these two.
Demand one.
Blue one's demand, Round one is marginal revenue. Yes, and we talked about how marginal revenue is steeper, slants down further, because you can't charge the people who would pay more as much as they're willing to pay, unless you're able to find a way to price discriminate, which you would love, but sometimes you can't do that. All right, now here's the thing. Everyone else sees you making economic profits. They say, wow, you're making more profit than we're making. This is a profitable industry. Let's get into that industry. Well, what happens? And then what happens? I won't say but so then what happens?
Whole thing shifts to the right.
Does it? I posed that question perhaps in a tricky way. Now, well, what happens? Right? Does the demand curve shift to the right? Do those other firms, do they get into the industry?
No.
They do not, because you have a monopoly. You're like, sorry, see ya. So the monopolists would get to maintain that profit in the long term. Unless somehow they're able to break into that industry. Perhaps regulators of the U.S. economy would say, this is not the best thing for society, this is not the best for everyone, so we're going to break up this monopoly, in which case you try to get good lawyers, you try to disguise that you have a monopoly, you try your best, and if you're allowed to keep a monopoly, then you could maintain long-run economic profits. Now, this is a good thing for the monopolists, but not necessarily a great thing for society. Because output is lower than it would be in perfect competition. Price is higher than it would be in perfect competition. And by extension of those two things, the price is higher than the marginal cost. So the price that consumers are willing to pay is higher than it costs the firm to produce that. And the beauty of perfect competition is that there's a perfect allocation of what society needs and wants. Based on what society needs and wants, they're willing to pay a certain amount, and we want 100% of that to go towards serving society's needs. But it doesn't. Right? A big chunk of that goes to one firm rather than society's needs. So price is much higher than marginal cost. That is the case against monopoly, in addition to the fact that output is lower, price is higher. Okay, so this is just some math about how the monopolist maximizes profit. This is that the monopolist can maintain a long-term profit, in contrast to perfect competition. All right, now we're on to price discrimination, which we've got a head start on price discrimination. The practice of a seller charging different prices for the same product not justified by the cost. Again, this is great for the person who is charging, great for the firm, great for you if you can do this, probably not as great for the rest of society. As I mentioned, why not charge the person who's willing to pay $150, $150? And then why not charge the second person exactly what they're willing to pay? Why not charge the fourth person $100? That way, you're not losing any of this value, and you would not have a marginal revenue curve that would be lower or steeper. I guess we'll say lower than the demand curve. So, price discrimination, that's how it would work. That's how it would work mathematically. And if you're a monopolist, you would want to do it if you can.
What are the reasons why we cannot do that?
Because if you're Amazon and you're price discriminating against people, you get a bunch of bad publicity, right? Or if you're a soft drink company and you're charging more on hot days or to really thirsty consumers, you also get a bunch of bad publicity. I mean, what did you think when you heard that? What was your first reaction when I told you that there was a soft drink company? Was it like, oh, that's terrible? That's a bad thing? Or was it like, oh, that's a good idea?
That's pretty sweet.
Okay.
I wish I thought of something like that.
Okay. All right. So, and there's also the example I mentioned we could, if we were a monopolist, and we were the only ones providing education to a certain market, we could charge more for average students and less for superior students. Let's look at the demand curve for average students. It is steeper, it is more inelastic, meaning we could increase price and we would lose fewer students. The demand curve for superior students is flatter and lower, meaning if we were to increase price, we would lose more students faster because they have other options. So how could we do a price discrimination and charge average students more and superior students less? Question.
Hide it in something.
Scholarships. Scholarships. Alright, so you may have always thought of scholarships as a good thing, and yes, they are a good thing, but it is price discrimination. It is a way of making more money by charging average students more and superior students who are not willing to pay as much less. There are tons of other ways to price discriminate. There is senior citizens discount, there's children's discount, there is certain membership benefits. You can say, I'm going to offer your book club this discount price, and you're going to sell more to people who would probably pay less because they are more into books and they have more options. What else?
Teacher discount.
Teacher discounts.
Or even with schools, if you have like a percentage off of tuition for different unions and stuff.
Okay. So it can be thought of as a good thing, and certainly helpful to you if you get a little discount. But if we look at the whole economic theory, this is price discrimination, and this is allowing the person who's providing that service to make more profit.
So it doesn't always get stopped. It's not like, it's just, if people
no.
notice it, then they just get a bad reputation. Oh well.
Yeah, if they're doing it, So if they're charging more on a hot day, then that's, society thinks that's bad. So they stop doing that if they get bad press. If they're giving scholarships to superior needy students, then everyone thinks that's good, and they say fine. But they're both the same, price discrimination. Okay. One thing that makes price discrimination difficult that I skipped over, besides bad press, is arbitrage. Alright, this is the practice of earning a profit by buying a good at a low price and reselling the good at a higher price. Suppose you get a senior citizen discount at the bookstore, and you buy your books for a lower price, and then you turn around, you walk into the freshman dorms, and you're like, alright, calculus books, I'll give you for, $20 off. If you're able to do that, then monopolist is not able to price discriminate. So monopolists would not be able to price discriminate, one, for bad press, potentially, but also if there's arbitrage opportunities. Question?
Well, arbitrage is used a lot in the stock market as well. In other words, you're buying companies at lower prices and then turning around and selling them at higher prices.
Yeah.
It's a very popular tactic.
Yeah. So would that be like a price discrimination of companies on a extremely large scale?
Then I know the opposite, small scale. There's a man in my neighborhood that buys stuff at tag sales and then has a store in his house.
Oh my God.
Like, fills stuff. And he has business cards. So you might get the stuff you might like, and you call him, do you have that?
So he makes a living
Yeah,
on arbitrage.
this stuff.
Wow. Yeah. And financiers make a living on
Make a
this.
living on arbitrage.
On the same concept too. So you should tell this guy, instead of making $2 profit on each item, you could make $2 million
Yeah.
profit. if you come to Mercy College, get an MBA, and get involved, take that same business savvy. All right. Is price discrimination unfair? Maybe, maybe not. All right. Some argue that it's nice to get a discount. I wouldn't be able to go to school otherwise. But it is a way for firms to make more money. Let's not lose sight of that. Is monopoly efficient? I mentioned this concept that price is higher than marginal cost. So price is higher than the marginal revenue, and that's higher than the marginal cost. So what society is willing to pay is not perfectly allocated to fill those needs. The monopolist gets that profit. And contrary to that, perfect competition is efficient in that manner. Okay, we saw at the beginning when we did a quick review, marginal revenue equals marginal cost in perfect competition, but there's this gap between, or price is the same as marginal revenue and it's the same as cost, but price is higher than cost for a monopolist. Higher prices, less output, alters distribution of income in favor of the monopolist. So it's unlikely that the monopolist is a really needy person who you might say deserves this extra economic profit. It's probably someone who would say, the person doesn't really deserve to make an economic profit, so I'm going to write my congressperson and ask them to regulate this industry, break up the monopoly. Or I'm going to write a bad Yelp review about Amazon because they're using this price discrimination tactic. They're monopolizing the market somehow. Questions on monopoly? All right, one down. Let's move on to the next chapter, which will cover monopolistic competition and oligopoly. Monopolistic competition. So this is what we face every day, essentially. We don't look at perfect competition every day. We look at monopolistic competition, which is many small sellers, differentiated product, easy entry and exit. Examples: grocery stores, hair salons, gas stations, restaurants. So these are industries which produce similar things, sell similar things, but they differentiate their product, sometimes to our benefit, sometimes they just annoy us with ads. There are many of these firms. Getting into the industry is fairly easy. It's not quite as easy as under perfect competition. The assumption under perfect competition is that all products are the exact same. Or each and every product, like the product you would produce is the exact same product that Luke would produce. And you would only compete on price. These firms compete on non-price factors. Compete on quality, service, affordability, convenience. When you're pulling up to the gas station, when I pull up to fill up my car at Exxon, Shell gas station, they have that, they like talk to you. They're like, oh, I hope you're having the recording, I hope you're having a good day. Come on in for a convenient this or that. And they'll give you maybe some little blurb about news, something like that. So they make it more convenient for you to compete with non-price factors. So monopolistic competition is the reality of what we face most of the time. Many sellers, differentiated products, easy entry and exit. Those are some examples. How many is many small sellers? So in perfect competition, a seller had zero effect on price. In monopolist competition, we'll say they have a negligible effect on price. Just very, very small. Tiny, tiny effect on price. But a firm in a monopolistic competition will not face the same flat demand curve. They will face a slightly steeped demand curve, just like a monopolist faces a really steep demand curve. So a monopolist is able to have some effect on the demand by differentiating their product. They can create a little bit more demand for their grocery store, a little bit more demand for their restaurant by differentiation. And we'll look at the graph to show us that. All right, so as Lonnie mentioned, product differentiation, process of creating real or apparent differences between goods and services. I mentioned barriers to entry. It should be fairly easy if you want to open up a restaurant. There's got to take some effort. It's going to take a lot of preparation and whatnot, but you should be able to do it. You're going to have to work to differentiate your restaurant from someone else's. Non-price competition, we talked about. Did I do that slide? Differentiation? Yeah, differentiation is, we'll call the same or similar as non-price competition. In perfect competition, we're just assuming the only thing firms compete on is price. Monopolistic competition, they compete on other things. A firm, a monopolistic competitive firm is a price maker, just a little bit. Let me actually skip ahead. Yeah. Let me skip ahead to these curves on slide, I'm not sure which slide it is, but a few slides ahead. So remember, in perfect competition, the firm faces a flat demand curve. So in perfect competition, a firm cannot charge 1 penny more than the market price that is established by supply and demand. And they would have no reason to charge less. A monopolist, as we saw, faces a steeped demand curve, and a monopolist can choose their output and, by extension, choose their price. In perfect competition, because the firm is able to differentiate just a little bit, they face a curve that is more steep than in perfect competition. This is monopolistic competition in the middle. I may have said it wrong. They face a curve that is a little bit steeper than perfect, less steep than for a monopolist. Because they're able to differentiate, they can create a little bit of their own demand and a little bit have an effect on price. Okay, and I think that's what those previous 2 slides said, that a monopolistic competitive firm can be a price maker with product differentiation. Not only that, all right, this is elasticity, a little bit more steep than perfect, a little bit less steep than monopolist. Okay. All right, so how does a firm, a grocery store, a monopolistic competition firm decide how much to produce? Well, they're going to use the same rule that everyone else uses, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. They'll just face the curves in a slightly different manner, which we'll demonstrate, but the decision will be the same. Based on the revenue they can get, if they can produce with a little less cost, then they will produce up to that point. They'll produce an additional unit and sell and make a little bit of a profit. All right, so let's check it out. This is the demand curve for the restaurant that is slightly differentiated. It is slightly curved. This restaurant, of course, has a marginal cost. Decreases as they get some economies of scale. Increases at some point as they lose efficiency. Now, because they have a steep demand curve, their marginal revenue curve is also steeped. Right? Just like for a monopolist. Their marginal revenue curve is derived from the demand curve, and it's steeper and lower. Why is it steeper and lower?
They can't take advantage of the people who want to pay more.
Exactly. They can't take advantage of the people who really, really love their shellfish. right?
Shellfish people.
Yes. They have to, because for whatever reason, they can't price discriminate. They may try with like a senior discount, sort of a non-shellfish day. That's what they like. We call this non-shellfish day. We'll give everybody a discount. So they will, of course, produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. They will hope that their average total cost is below that, and they will hope that they're making a profit. Okay, so they've set up shop, they've differentiated themselves a little bit, and they are making an economic profit. What happens next?
Let's keep doing it.
They want to keep doing it. Yes. What do their potential competitors do?
They also keep
So would other people be attracted to this profit and say, I'm going to set up a store like yours? Or I'm going to offer my shellfish menu item because you've had so much success with it? Yes. All right. Other firms are going to enter the market because they can. You don't have a monopoly. You're just differentiated a little bit. So what's going to happen is this marginal cost curve is going to shift to the right. It's going to drive the price down a little bit. Your demand curve, as other firms enter, is going to shift to the left. Because other firms are going to say, we offer a shellfish dish that is just as good as yours. So come eat with us, and we're going to offer better service, more convenience. They're going to compete with you on these non-price factors. And your demand curve, you're fortunate to face a steep demand curve, but it's going to shift a little bit to the left. The other thing that's going to happen is you're going to bear costs on competing on these non-price factors. You're going to have to pay for advertising. You're going to have to pay for waiters who are more polite. You're going to have to pay for certain things that are going to add convenience. You're going to have increased costs. So your average total cost is going to go up. The demand curve is going to shift to the left. And unfortunately, your economic profit is going to disappear. So long run cost for firms increasing, advertising expenses. As I mentioned, the demand curve shifts leftwards. The market price declines, and economic profits are eliminated. So, cost of advertising. So this is our long run average cost without advertising, long run average cost with advertising. So what do you think about that? Look at all that money that goes to advertising. You think that's a good thing?
Go somewhere else, right? Use it. So, well, it depends on the advertising. It could be really great advertising. You can make a lot of revenue or use it for other.
Yeah, but how does it benefit society? Does it benefit society, or is there just like a wasted cost? All right, so it's debatable, right? On the one hand, all right, it's a lot of money spent on something that doesn't directly benefit you. But on the other hand, it forces firms to think creatively, forces current firms to think about your needs, think about how they could appeal to you, and how they could show you how much they've differentiated their product to make you happy. On the other hand, we lose some efficiency. And economists just make a note of that. They say, all right, so we've got this long-run average cost has been shifted up because you have some differentiation because you're a slightly different restaurant. You have a slanted demand curve. And what's happening is you are producing at a point that is not the minimum point on the long-run average cost curve. Because you have differentiated yourself in a way that allows you to produce at a slightly produce and charge at a slightly higher price. So by spending a lot on advertising, you are able to charge a slightly higher price. If we wanted maximum efficiency, the kind of efficiency we get with perfect competition, we would strive for all firms to produce at the lowest average long-term average cost. That would be the situation where we have the most benefit to society. But it's a slightly different situation. With increased costs on advertising, with product differentiation, which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing. We just have to be aware it's not as efficient as the theory of perfect competition. We are producing at a point slightly above our long-run average costs. Questions? So I believe that is monopolistic competition. To sum up, new firms enter, firm's demand curve decreases, firm increases advertising expenses, long-run average cost increases, zero economic profit. Efficiency, price is higher and quantity is lower in monopolistic competition compared to perfect competition. And we are producing at a point that is not the minimum long-run average cost. Does that make sense? But this is the society we live in. Perfect competition is just a theory. There's no such thing as identical products. Your product, the way you produce it, is going to be a little bit different than the one that Stephanie produces. And we like that. But we have to pay for it. At advertising, we're the ones who pay for it, with slightly higher costs. All that product development, we're the ones who pay for it. Those ads on the Super Bowl we see, that cost $1 million for every 30 seconds. We're the ones who pay for that, right? Right? Question?
Well, but it's not just advertising, though, is it? I mean, if you're advertising, you got to be able to say you're doing something. So either you've continued to try to differentiate your product in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something through cost to try to do that. In terms of it's not just making the claim; it's being able to show a result.
Yeah, I mean, we want. Yeah, absolutely. We want firms working for us. We want firms giving us better products. I think we had the discussion in class 1. Isn't it great we live in a society where someone like Steve Jobs can be rewarded by giving us something that is so useful to us, something that makes such a difference in our work lives and our personal lives. Don't we want to reward someone for that effort? Absolutely. Advertising is part of that, but it's just, if we understand the theory, it's just, we have to realize that there's just that small inefficiency. All right, ready to move on to oligopoly? All right. What is an oligopoly? This is not a monopoly. Monopoly is one huge seller. An oligopoly is a few sellers. 2, 3, 5, 6, a dozen. Few sellers. They could be selling the same product or a differentiated product, and entry is difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. All right. Examples of oligopoly industries, such as steel, oil, aluminum. All right. It's difficult to set up a steel-producing factory, steel-producing plant. It takes huge factory, huge economies of scale. Such, only a few huge industries or huge firms do it. And if you want to start it tomorrow, it's going to be very, very difficult. What these firms are selling is a similar product. It's just steel. There are oligopolist industries who sell a differentiated product, such as automobile industries, Ford, Honda, Toyota. All right, these are huge companies that sell basically the same thing, but slightly differentiated. Coke, Pepsi, right? They sell basically the same thing, slightly differentiated. Difficult to entry. Markets difficult entry for some of the same reasons that a monopoly may be difficult to enter. Formidable barriers, financial requirements, essential resources, patents, economies of scale is the one I think is easiest to think of. Right? It would just require a huge investment to start a car company. Huge financial investment, huge investment of intellectual capital, the know-how to do that. It'd be very difficult for you or I to start an automobile producing company tomorrow. How few sellers? When firms are so large relative to the market, they can affect the market price. So this is the key thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how in an oligopoly, an oligopolist is able to affect the market price with their actions. Monopolistic competition, those firms, you and your restaurant, no matter how good you are, you have a very negligible effect on the overall market price. The reason oligopolists are able to affect the market price is because they are mutually independent. When Coke increases their price by 5 cents, that affects Pepsi. When Pepsi decreases their price by 50 cents, that has a huge effect on the profits of the other company. So these are a few small handful of sellers. A dozen, 2 dozen maybe even 2 or 3. And the actions of one will affect the actions of others. And we'll talk about this in some of our different oligopoly models. 4 different ways this industry can be shaped that we'll discuss. 1, non-price competition. We'll talk about how oligopolists will compete on factors not including price. We'll talk about price leadership, how essentially oligopolists will not really compete. One big firm will just set the price, and all the other firms will be afraid to try to compete, and they'll just follow the leader, set the same price that the big oligopolist is setting. The third model we'll talk about is a cartel, how an oligopoly, this handful of sellers could get together and say, we're going to collude and decide how much output to sell, and we're going to control the price and maximize our profits that way. And the last thing we'll talk about is game theory, which is related to the first 2 of how these firms are wondering what the other firm is going to do, trying to guess, and or trying to react quickly or punish the other firm for doing something that hurts their profits. So we'll go through these first 2 pretty quickly. Non-price competition, this is what we've already talked about before, with monopolistic competition to differentiate their product. So Coke says we are different than Pepsi. They spend all sorts of advertising convincing you that they are. They keep their recipe secret. They have this taste that you just can't quite figure out what it is, why you like it. They differentiate somehow. Honda differentiates their cars with better quality. All right, we won't break down. This is arguably very good for society because we want firms competing with these factors, on these factors, to give us a better product. We also want them competing a little bit on price. And we'll talk about how that gets a little bit fuzzy. All right, so that's non-price competition. This happens in a market dominated by a few and by an oligopoly. Another thing that happens in an industry dominated by an oligopoly, price leadership. This might be where one firm, the biggest firm, would set the price, and there wouldn't really be a supply-demand competition. Everyone else would just look at what the price leader does, and they would set their price at that price, or maybe just a little bit lower. So they can say, we charge $1 lower, $1 less, a little bit less than this firm. And these firms, the smaller firms, would be afraid to start a price war, and they would just play nice, essentially. Price leadership. All right. Yes, Andres.
Where does like DSW stand in this, like compared to another shoe store?
DSW, they're what, a really big shoe store?
Yeah, but like you can go there and get, just say for instance, Gucci shoes.
It's like TJ Maxx or something.
Yeah.
Like,
So where do they fall in there? Or is it just?
Are they, yeah, you're going to have to tell me. Are they, they're like a big department store?
Yeah,
And are they?
Discount shoe store.
yeah,
you
discount.
can get designer things for less price.
Okay.
Lower price.
So are they an oligopolist?
It's a Walmart for shoes.
It's a what's
Yeah.
it called? No, it's the opposite of arbitrage.
Oh, so you can get designer shoes for less. So they're doing some sort of arbitrage themselves?
I don't know.
But they don't have the best shoes.
Opposite.
Right,
They're
yeah.
selling it for less. Maybe they're defective.
No, not
Or they're
defective,
buying
but
it
there's-
bulk.
they produce at different levels. I think.
Yeah, so they're differentiating themselves by charging less in price. So I mean, I would say they're monopolistic competition. So they're doing some sort of differentiation. They are differentiating themselves a bit on price, but also they've got their reputation. We give you designer shoes for less.
Well, actually, there's a lot of shoe stores like that. So they're competing in that industry that is going to these people that are making the shoes, kind of lower quality materials, and then they're selling them in these discount houses.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I can't remember some of the names, but I mean, they're pretty common names out there who people are in the discount shoe business.
Could it be like a mutual partnership? Like, say they go to something like Gucci and says, "Hey, we'll buy a bunch of your shoes," and then like, yeah, like they buy like a bunch of the shoes, and then like it helps them because people are gonna buy the cheaper shoe at the department store, but they're spreading the brand.
Okay, yes.
They'll be like, "Okay, we'll sell them to you. You could discount them, but use our name," type of thing.
Yes.
It's like a
But
branding
you can-
thing.
But sometimes they won't let you use the name. Like, for instance, Armani will sell a kind of an Armani look-alike, but they say you cannot use
Yeah,
our name.
It's like an Armani.
So then once you go to the store, the guy said, hey,
Yeah.
this is really made by Armani, but it's not the Armani name, but you got the same kind of suit.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what?
They do that with the cologne too. Like you could buy like Aqua di Gio, but if you go to like Kohl's, it's just Gio.
Yeah. So, right. So what is Armani and Gucci? What are they doing in this situation? Sorry about that.
Imagine if she answered.
What are they doing? They are
That's what I
price
was thinking.
discriminating,
Yeah,
right?
Like,
They're
using their brand.
They're charging a higher price for the people who will pay more for the Gucci label, and they're charging a little bit less for the people who want that same quality but can't afford it. So they're price discriminating. What they're also doing is they're differentiating themselves. They're saying, we have a better product. It has our brand. It has our name right on it. These discount shoe stores, these other shoe stores, they would probably argue they're not as good as us. They would advertise. They would say it's cool to wear shoes with our label on it, or our clothes with our label on it, or it's not some cheap knockoff. Yeah.
Maybe they're older models too.
Older.
I don't know.
Oh, they're older out of style
Maybe.
models.
Maybe. Like it's like the previous year, and then they're like, "Oh, that's okay. We got a new shoe, so we'll sell you the older shoe or last year's shoe
Yeah.
for cheap."
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm only thinking.
Yeah, and I think that's another price discrimination tactic.
Well, yeah, it would be because they're selling their brand. It's still the brand, but they're selling the outdated product.
Well, like in outlet stores, like say Michael Kors, Coach, they do like their not in season purses. When they
Right,
switch
yeah.
out, it's kind of the same thing.
Okay. Good. All right. Good discussion. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, Andres. All right. So cartel. What's a cartel?
Drugs.
Drugs is
No,
wrong.
not that.
All right. A cartel is a group of firms formally agreed to control price and output of a product. The best known cartel is OPEC. What does OPEC do? They get together. They say, we're the ones who have all the oil, or most of the oil, and we're going to restrict output to increase our profits. And if anybody doesn't, we're going to agree to this, and if anybody cheats and starts producing more That's going to decrease our profits, so that's going to make us really mad. So what are we going to do? Right?
Raise prices to influence the market.
It's not going to be good for you
Yeah.
if you mess with us. This is cartel, formal collusion. This is illegal in the United States. It is not illegal outside of the United States. So they get together and they say, let's restrict output to 20. Instead of an equilibrium supply and demand, we're going at 50 and a price of 60. We're going to restrict output to 20, and we're going to charge 90. We're going to have to, we're not going to work as hard. We're not going to sell as much. Our profits are going to be higher because we're going to be able to charge a higher price. They work it out. Whatever gives them the most profit, that's what they're going to do. Now, what is the problem with this? Well, two problems. One, it is not the best thing for the rest of society. Two, there's the cheating problem that we mentioned. So as you can see, if everyone agrees we're going to restrict output to 20, price is going to be way up here. If one firm wants to start cheating, maybe smuggling their oil, smuggling their product through a different channel, hoping no one notices, they're going to be able to charge a very high price for it. On the next slide, we have a graph illustrating this, why cartel members may cheat. We've got marginal cost. We've got marginal revenue, which is where they set this artificial price by restricting demand. Everyone's going to agree we're gonna produce this much, but that's going to leave the price pretty high. And if I'm selling and no one else is selling, because everyone else is following the rules, then I'm making a bundle. So this is a problem with being an oligopolist. Problem with being a cartel. You have to manage cheaters. I don't know if drug cartels have the same issue managing.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Larger scale.
Larger. Yeah, they have other problems. Other
Among other
reasons.
things, yeah.
Well, they're fighting over distribution channels.
They fight over distribution.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine drug cartels would agree on output, wouldn't they? No?
I doubt it.
No?
Well, maybe because then they can increase the price when someone really wants it.
Yeah, maybe. But also they might say, well, everybody wants our product anyway. Drug users, kind of sad, really. We're able to differentiate. We're able to create crazy demand. All right. So we have this disadvantage of cheating. All right, now let's talk about informal collusion. So this is not where the cartel gets together and decides to restrict output. This is informally companies find an alternative way to agree on price without any tacit communication. For example, firms follow established rules by the industry. So they just kind of see, so Coke kind of looks over, sees what Pepsi's doing. All right, so they're raising their price a little bit. All right, why don't we raise our price a little bit? And everyone will play nice. We won't start a price war, we'll just both make a little bit more money. This is informal collusion, which brings us to game theory. We'll talk about how that works. Model of strategic moves and counter moves of rivals. Let's look at this payoff matrix. And that'll be our discussion of game theory. Now, in your book, actually, there's a misprint. I think this said the wrong airlines in your textbook. But suppose we've got two airlines, American Airlines and Delta Airlines. We'll either assume they're the only ones who offer certain flights, or they're the only ones who offer flights in a certain area. So they are oligopolists in a certain niche. Now, we'll also assume that both firms have the option, only two options, to charge high fares or charge low fares. So, if both firms are charging high fares, then They're essentially going to split a smaller quantity of consumers, but they may be making a significant profit. Now, if Delta sees that America is charging high fares, they can say, all right, we're going to do a price discount. We're going to offer a special, a big advertising blitz. We're going to charge a low fare. And what's going to happen? All right, all the customers who are flying on American are saying, we're going to take advantage of the low fare on Delta. We're not going to pay that high fare on American. And what happens then is Delta captures a huge share of the market and makes a substantial profit. Because think about it. If there's just two people in the industry, right? David and Luke, you're the only two people in the industry. David's charging a really high price, Luke's charging a really low price. Who are you going to buy from? Luke, of course. So, what happens then? Once one firm starts charging a low price, the other firm says, well, I'm not going to let this firm take all of our profits. We're going to charge a low price too. But look at the profits for each of them. So if both firms are charging a high fare, Delta makes $8 billion, American makes $8 billion. All right, and then all of a sudden Delta cuts their fare. Delta goes up to $10 billion, American Airlines drops way down to $2 billion. So then American Airlines responds and says, we're going to charge low fares as well. Delta drops to 5, American gets back up to $5 billion. So, best case scenario for any one firm is for them to be charging the low fare and for the other firm to be charging the high fare. But that's not gonna be maintained very long. If we're afraid the other firm is going to cut their prices, we're going to immediately go to cutting our prices. So this is going to be the long-run equilibrium. $5 billion in profits for both firms. But what if there's some way they could both tacitly agree to charge the high price? Then we could both be making an extra $3 billion. You'd be better off, I'd be better off. Why do we want to get into this price war? Why don't we just tacitly agree to charge the higher fare?
It's illegal.
No, we didn't include. I didn't talk to you, you didn't talk to me. Those are my costs. That's what I think. I don't have anybody in your office, you don't have anybody in my office. I'm charging high fares because air travel is tough. We've got terrorist threats to worry about. We've got higher gas prices. We've got better customer service. What do you think? You can do it. The only problem is you're going to be afraid that the other firm is going to cut their prices. But if you can do it without formal agreement, firms do it all the time.
Well, that's why there's a lot of antitrust investigations.
Mm-hmm. So the last thing you want in an antitrust investigation is an email between you and the other firm saying, let's charge high fares. So they definitely don't do that, and they try to maintain, they would love to maintain this as long as possible. The obstacle to maintaining this is typically not as much that it's against the law and the regulators come in. It's the fear that the other company is going to cut their prices. So both firms are going to ultimately charge a lower price. Make sense? Questions? You like that? The payoff matrix? All right. So tit for tat for the game theory models, like if you're going to decrease your price, I'm going to decrease my price. Or we could do a price leadership. If you're going to charge a high price, I'm going to charge a high price. If you're going to charge a low price, I'm going to charge a low price. But ultimately, it's that fear that's going to drive both firms to charge a lower price. Conclusion, the price charged. So conclusion, oligopoly price charged for the product will be higher under perfect competition. More money is spent on forms of non-price competition. Those Super Bowl ads we see, Coke versus Pepsi. Again, we're paying an extra nickel or 10 cents for every can of Pepsi. Maybe even more than that. I don't know. How much more are we paying for every can of Pepsi because of the advertising and the non-price competition that those two firms engage in? Probably a surprisingly high amount. Okay, so here we've got Exhibit 9.6, which is a summation of the four different models. So we've got just some income distribution labor markets. Do we want to take a quick break? Do we want to keep going? What do y'all think?
Keep going.
Keep going? We're going to keep going? Keep going? All right.
I mean, only a few left.
Okay. Let's do it. All right. So let's talk about the supply and demand of labor. All right. You're going to have to help me out on this. This is this concept about the labor market, and it's just backwards of the way that we normally think of supply and demand. We have the supply of labor are workers. Workers who say, I will work for you depending on how much you pay. And if the higher you pay, the more people who are knocking on your door saying, please give me a job. Demand for labor, this is firm demand for labor. Right? How much the firm wants to pay. The higher the charge for each unit of labor, the less the firm will demand. The lower the charge, the more workers the firm will hire. Recall from chapter 6, the production function. All right, let's review this production function. The production function equates the quantity of labor with the total output. So on the horizontal graph, we have the number of workers we're going to hire. And on the vertical aspect, we have the total output. So one worker is going to produce 12 units. 2 workers total are going to produce 21. 3 workers, we get some synergy, like those 3 workers, they all work together as a team effectively. They all produce 33 units. And then as we start adding 4, 5, and 6 workers, we see this leveling off. All right, we get less benefit for each additional unit of labor added. And what did we call that? Do you remember? Diminishing returns. We get a diminishing return for each additional unit of labor. There's only so much space in the factory. There's only so much, so much we can increase our quantity by throwing more and more workers at it. And what we'll see is that this production function, a marginal product of labor, is going to determine how much labor we demand and how much we're going to pay for labor. So if we're at this point on the production function, we're going to pay more for this first worker than we are for this fourth worker. Right? Because the fourth worker is only going to give us this much more product. The first worker is going to give us this much more product. So what we're going to calculate is how much product an additional worker is going to produce and how much we're going to be able to sell that product for. And we're going to call that marginal revenue product. That's a couple slides later, but I just want to, I guess, whet your appetite to that concept. We're going to look at how much each additional worker can produce, how many units, and we're going to look at how much we can sell those units for, and that's going to determine how much wage we will pay for each additional worker. So let's do that. So, marginal product, the change in total output that occurs by adding 1 unit of the variable input, labor, everything else held constant. As we mentioned, the law of diminishing returns, as we add more and more workers, we're going to get less marginal product. And it could even decline and become negative. There we have it, law of diminishing returns. And that brings us to this concept of marginal revenue product. The increase in total revenue of firm resulting from hiring an additional unit of labor. So, we hire one more worker. That worker produces 3 more units. We sell each of those units for $110. The marginal revenue product is $330 per day. And that is going to give us our demand for labor. Marginal revenue product, price times marginal product. Demand for labor curve is let's go to the graph. Yeah, let's go to the graph and let's think this through. Actually, let's go back one from the graph, and I normally won't take you through specific numbers like this, but I think it helps us to understand this concept. So this first column is workers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 workers. All right, 1 worker will produce 5 units, 2 workers 9, 12, 14, 15. So how many extra units will each additional worker produce? So I go from 1 to 2 workers, I produce an extra 4 workers. All right, so let me back a minute. I go from 0 to 5 units, I will produce an extra 5 units. How much am I selling that product for? $70. So my marginal revenue product is $350. So I might, in fact I would, be willing to pay up to $350 for that first worker. Because that's how much revenue that worker is bringing in. So I would pay potentially up to $350 in costs for that 1 worker. Now let's do one more step. From worker 1 to worker 2, that worker produces an additional 4 units. I sell those units for $70. 4 times 70 is $280. If I were to hire that second worker, how much might I pay for that worker, say per day? How much? 280? Yeah, 280, right? Yeah. That's how much revenue they're generating for me. So I would pay up to that amount. Now this is just like, I'm assuming that I have my HR department, I'm assuming I have my factory all configured, and I'm just looking purely at how much revenue this worker is bringing in, and I would pay up to that much in cost.
You don't want to be the new guy.
Don't want to be the what?
The new guy.
New, what do you
Like
mean?
if the first person who started working there could make that much, then the next person.
Yes. All right. So here's the thing. Now, wouldn't it be great though if the first person could charge the company $350 and the second person could charge the company $280? All right. So possible, but sometimes it's hard to price discriminate, right? So what the company does is they pay $280 for 2 workers, and they benefit by not having to pay that extra $70 for the first worker. And it gets even better when they get all the way down to the 5th worker, who adds an additional $70 of marginal revenue product, and they pay $70 per worker for all 5 workers. Right? It would be great if the workers could price discriminate, but they can't. They'll try. They'll try to negotiate a salary, they'll try to form a union, but often it's difficult. So this brings us to our graph. Remember, from going from 0 to 1 workers, we would be willing to pay the firm would be willing to pay $350 for that first worker per day. We would be willing to pay up to $280 for the second worker, so on and so forth, all the way down to the 5th worker. Going from 4 workers to 5 workers, we would pay $70 for. And this wage rate is determined based on supply and demand. Let's see. So we've got, on the other side, we've got the supply of workers. The higher the wage rate, more workers want to work, less workers want to work. In perfect competition, the intersection of supply and demand sets the equilibrium wage rate. So the firm doesn't get to decide the wage rate. And as we saw, that is potentially, the firm might even look at that as a good thing, because the last thing they would want to do is give away all their profits because the first worker generates a little bit more efficiency than the second worker. They would try to keep as much profit for themselves as they can. And it works out that the wage rate is set in equilibrium, and that determines how many workers they can hire. Okay, I skipped ahead just because I wanted to get to the graphs rather than read words to you. Let me see, did I forget anything? All right, we talked about how the marginal revenue product is derived, and that's going to determine the firm's demand for labor. Okay, so the firm's demand for labor does depend on the consumer price. So what happens if the consumer price goes up? So you're like my fifth worker. You're producing an extra 2 units per day. All right. The more I can sell those units for, the more I would be willing to pay you. So price goes up, my demand for labor goes up. Supply curve is how much workers would supply their services. In perfect competition, we have an intersection, equilibrium, supply and demand. Okay, and we talked about how in a competitive market, the firm it takes the equilibrium. It's like a price taker. It's not a price maker. The equilibrium wage rate is determined, and the firm just has to live with that. Okay, any questions on that before we look at some of the nuances of how these two curves would shift to the left or the right? All right, so let's look at each one of these and just have maybe a 5-minute discussion on each slide. Factors causing changes in labor demand. So we have, let's refresh, labor demand is demand. What is labor demand? Someone just remind us. Is that the firm? Is that the workers? Because like I mentioned, this is backwards of the way we normally think about it. So what is labor demand? Yes, Crystal, tell us. Workers. So why does it slant downwards like this? No, it's not workers. It's
no, I got it reversed.
Yeah. All right. It's not workers. We can try again. Right? Now we're both flustered. It's the firm. All right, and the firm will pay less as the price. The firm will pay more as the price goes down, based on how much these workers are able to produce and how much they're able to sell the product for. Conversely, the workers provide supply, and if you pay them more, they're going to want to work. More people are going to want to work. Makes sense. All right, factors that causes changes in labor demand. Unions. All right. So right now we're going to talk about what might shift this demand and supply to the left and the right, just like we did in class 1. What might unions do to change this?
Shift demand to the left.
Yeah, to the left, like this way, like less demand?
Yeah, because you have to give those workers more benefits and a fair pay, so their demand to entice more supply of workers would go down.
That is a good point. Let me think that through. Let me go with a different concept, and then I'm going to come back to yours, because you may have even confused me on this one. Unions will often increase demand by requiring firms to hire more. They will say you have to hire more workers based on the contract, so increase demand. They will also sometimes set a price floor, which could result in a surplus. So I think, let's think through. Luke brings up a good point. Can we categorize what Luke said in terms of they increased the price by
Yeah.
posing restrictions, and in which case,
That's kind of like the price floor too,
yes,
because the unions will bargain to set a price for
yes,
the workers. So therefore, when demand could shift to the left too, right?
So they'll set all right. So shift to the left
Because the firm's not going to want to have more workers if they have to set a price floor or meet that price floor, right?
Yeah, but I think can't we just say it's a price floor, and then so the firms are going to say, well, it's not, the demand curve is not going to shift. It's just that the firms are going to say, okay, fine, I'm going to go back to I have to go back to this point.
Right.
That's fine because based on my calculations of how much revenue.
Yeah. Vice versa, in
That
terms of
person's gonna-
supply, they would have less workers then, right?
Oh, okay.
So is that what you're trying to like? Is that maybe that's what I'm getting at? I don't know.
Yeah, I think
I don't
so.
know anymore.
Because supply, what they can unions can restrict supply by saying you cannot work unless you have union membership, and then they can have some deal where they call them skilled workers because they have certain training, yada yada. So unions can increase demand by forcing firms to hire more through collective bargaining. They can decrease supply by saying you can't work or you can't hire somebody unless they're a member of the union, and they have to go through this really long apprenticeship program and get these skills. And the third thing the firm can do is set a price floor, which would decrease the quantity that the firms would hire, but would not shift either curve. I feel like that was really exciting for me, but I may have gone over your heads with that. Yeah. Yeah. Should we just review those three things? The shift in demand this way, the shift in supply this way, and the price floor. All right. So let's start at the beginning. How does the union shift demand to the right?
Hire more workers due to contracts.
Say it.
Hire more workers. You said due to contract.
What was the second you said? Issue contract?
Due to contract.
Due to contract. Yeah. So they require firms to hire more workers, and they shift demand to the right. How would unions shift supply to the left?
Required to hire only special trained workers.
Yes.
Went to their apprenticeship program.
Yes. They could institute a price floor, and that would restrict the amount, but that wouldn't shift the curve. Another thing I just thought of, unions could shift the demand curve to the right by increasing consumer demand. They could start some sort of campaign, you should only buy union, buy made in America only. All right, and then consumers say, I'm going to buy more of your shoes, and the price goes up, and what happens to marginal revenue product? Price goes up. All right, so each worker is worth a little bit more. Okay, so that's unions. Price of substitute goods. This is if the firm can produce, can make more money producing something else, then their demand for you all producing shoes is going to decrease. Right? If we can produce something else and make more money, right, I'm not going to demand your labor producing shoes as much. Now, technology. This is a fun one. All right, suppose, because this is an interesting discussion, suppose technology makes my workers more productive and makes my workers able to produce more product. What's going to happen to the demand and supply of labor? I'll give you a hint. There's the theory, and then there's the reality. I don't know if that was a big hint or not. When I say theory, I mean something we just talked about. guess that's what I meant by hint. So if my technology allows my workers to produce more, what's going to happen to the marginal product of my workers? It's going to increase, right?
Should be.
Increase.
You're gonna need less.
Okay, all right. So we're getting to reality, but we'll just start with theory. It's going to increase how much my workers are going to be able to produce, and what's going to happen to my marginal revenue product? Increase. Okay, so what's going to happen to my demand for labor?
Decrease.
Increase. You want more to make you more money.
Increase. I'm now willing to pay more for this fifth worker because this fifth worker can produce more than 1 unit. This fifth worker can produce 3 units. So I'm now willing to pay more for each and every point along the demand curve.
But you won't tell them.
Yes, you're right. I will not tell them that. And then I'll join the union, and the union will say, "You're making so much money, help the little guy out." Okay, and then Crystal, of course, brought up the reality. You might get the bright idea that we can just hire fewer workers, but be pure economic and produce the same amount. But the theory is that technology should increase my demand.
Or technology can totally decrease it if the technology, like the scanner at the grocery store, that you just do it yourself. So you don't need a person.
Ah, yes. So what would be the theory on that? That that any one worker can serve more customers because the customers can scan their own items. So any one worker is able to generate more sales. So demand shifts. So you definitely want to be the worker who's able to use that technology because you'll be in more demand. But there is, of course, the reality where someone who hasn't taken the economics class will just say, "Oh, well, you can produce more. I need to hire fewer workers." There is that reality as well. All right, what have we covered? Demand for final products. So if the demand for final products goes up, people are willing to pay more. What happens to demand for labor?
So
Yep, goes up. Same thing. Shifts this way. Boom. You got it. And then same thing. Marginal product of labor. If my workers are producing more, what happens to demand? What?
Goes up.
Yep, goes up. Does everyone understand both those two? So demand. If my workers are able to produce more, if there's more demand for my products, and each unit they produce is worth more to me, or if they're able to use technology to produce more, all of that increases demand for my demand for labor. Question?
So you're saying the law of diminishing returns doesn't operate in this situation?
And which one?
When you're continue to add more workers
Which one? Which one?
on the demand for final product.
Like this one? The marginal product of labor?
No. Demand.
Demand for final products.
Yeah.
Okay, so demand for final products. So that this would be price. All right. So what's the price of the thing I'm selling? All right. This is the consumer demand, consumer supply. So and it's going to be confusing because, as I noted, when we look at the labor, it's just we're shifting our minds around that the demand is the firm now, and here the demand is the consumer. All right, consumer. Okay, so what happens when the consumer demands more? What happens to price? Goes up. Yep. Okay, so price increases. All right. When price increases, what happens to the marginal revenue product?
make you more
My
money.
last worker was able to produce one more unit. I used to be able to sell that for $70. Now I can sell it for $90. So what happens to my marginal revenue product? it goes up. Goes up. So I'm going to say instead of paying $70 for that last worker, I'm willing to pay $90. And at every point, instead of paying $350 for this last worker, I'm willing to pay 90 times 5, which is whatever that is, 420 or something like that. So the diminishing returns, I guess, just doesn't really apply to this concept. All right. Supply. We've already talked about a lot of these. So supply, we talked about how unions can decrease supply by requiring union membership. Demographic trends. Right? People don't want to take certain jobs. We have an influx of population, people who have certain skills. Maybe the immigration lets in more people who are able to do coding, computer coding. Maybe immigration lets in more people who are willing to do manual labor. So those demographic trends shift the supply. Let's skip over this expectations of future income because I want to talk about that. That's a bit of a weird one. And changes in immigration law, I guess, could be the same as demographic trends. I guess I went over immigration law, but demographic trends, this would be kids don't want these types of jobs anymore, I guess. The baby boomers are retiring. Yeah, so there's going to be a huge demand for, for jobs filled by baby boomers. Maybe if you work in higher education, the baby boomers, all these professors are retiring. So there's going to be huge demand for young, tall professors, hopefully. Education and training. So if you're able to educate yourself and give yourself more training, a couple things are going to happen. One, you could increase your marginal product, so you could produce more, and therefore you would be worth more to an employer. Or two, you would just be on a completely different demand curve. Right? This would be the demand curve for making cars. You push yourself on a demand curve for making computers, designing computers. Is a different demand curve for you personally. But just the education and training and the theory aspect would be increasing your marginal product. And then lastly, I guess we may not talk about this too much. This one never really resonated with me too much. Expectations of future income. So I guess if you're expecting to make more in the next years, you're going to say, all right, I'm not going to work as hard this year because I'm going to make more later. It made a little bit more sense to me if you think of the fact that I might lose my job because I don't know what's going to happen with the economy over the next 2-3 years.
So price would influence that, right?
Give me 1 second on that. Let me get this out. So, if I think, all right, so this is demand, firm demand. This is supply. Okay, so if I think the economy is going crazy and I might lose my job, I am going to be more inclined to work at the same price. So the supply curve would shift like this. So if there were this many people willing to work at the low price, $40 per day, all of a sudden I'm like, I better take this $40 a day job, $40 a day job, because
I have a job next year.
I have a job next year. Similarly, if it's like 100, I'm still going to want that job proportionally, even more too. Okay, so that's that. Question, Luke?
No, you could finish that. I'm trying to take it all in.
Okay. All right. I think that's the stuff. Question.
But I wonder if
that's
the
it.
expectation of future income really is talking about the industries. For instance, there's not going to be a real market for engineers on trains. We use trains less. And so therefore a person would go from one industry to another trying to figure out which one has a greater viability in the future.
That's a good point. So, okay. So all these people who are willing to work at $100 a day, they say, all right, this industry is in the pits and it's getting even worse, so I'm going to go to to another industry, so the supply curve shifts that way. That's fine. Expectations of future income decreasing. I guess that works.
How would
Well,
How
they
would
close all
demand
these
be
plants.
influenced?
What's that?
How would demand be influenced? Because wouldn't
Demand.
would
Yeah,
demand
I'm just
go,
saying
would
supply.
demand go down as more people are willing to work for less money a day?
I'm saying that supply shifts. Demand is based on marginal revenue.
Oh, right. So
Right.
then that's based on the firm. So the firm doesn't care whether you work $100 a day or not, because based on the economy, they're not going to.
They're just going to pay you what your worth is.
Oh, okay.
However many units you make for them times however much they sell it for, that's how they're going to determine how much they'll pay for it.
But what if people, like students, are saying, "Oh, I don't have to work right now because when I graduate, I'm going to make a lot of money."
Yes. And that could go into education and training too. So I guess that would decrease the supply of labor and shift it to the left. I could go with that.
But you only make a lot of money if you select the right industry.
Selection is key. That's probably why we're all here. And are in an MBA program because you want
First
something.
4 years wasn't enough.
Right. More education and training. So you're doing two things. One, you're increasing your marginal revenue product. So we put you in a job, you're going to be able to produce more, and you're going to be worth more money to the company. And the other thing is you'll be in a different industry. Hopefully one that you like more, but also won't hurt that it pays a little bit more as well. Question?
Well, I think one of the reasons for GI benefits after World War II was to keep the soldiers out of the labor market, keep them in school, and then kind of phase them into the labor market.
Mm-hmm.
So, in fact, higher education does keep you out of the labor market for a certain period of time while the economy is in transition.
So how does that work? All right, so we've got firm demand for labor, and we've got supply. So the government said let's shift supply. Okay, let's shift the quantity. All right, so that we don't. It probably wasn't necessarily to keep the prices higher. They were just afraid of flooding the market and the prices just going way down.
Right.
Okay.
People were coming back from the war and they didn't have jobs. And so the economy, they needed to grow the economy. You need time to grow the economy. The way to grow the economy is keep people out of the economy for a period of time, keep them out of the economy for a period of time by sending them to school. That's what GI Bill's premise actually was.
I did not know that. Never heard that. You all heard that before? So, yeah, it also keeps the population happy.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Expectation of
Good
future.
figure out. Wow. Yeah. All right. Good stuff. See you all next week. And I mentioned Alani earlier, so I'll tell you all. But the quiz for this week, I think, is pretty easy. I tried to make that a little bit easier. And again, if you didn't do so well on the first and second quiz, I wouldn't worry about that for a number of reasons. One, because it's just a small percentage of your grade. Two, as long as you know the material and are able to do well on the final, that's going to be a much larger percentage of your grade. And three, what I mentioned, I think the quiz for this week is a little easier, and
There's
I'll
also
try.
missing points in the syllabus, so we could drop one quiz.
Missing.
That was an option at one point.
Oh yeah, drop one quiz. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. All
We'll
right.
drop one quiz. Did I mention that last week? Yeah, we'll drop. You can drop. You can retake.
I didn't know if it was definite. I thought it was because I thought you said pending checking the syllabus and the adding up of all the points.
No, I didn't say that. Did I? Did I miss points on the syllabus? Did I say?
It was like the first week. It only added up to like 80 or 85%.
Oh,
something like that.
no, 85%.
It was
Maybe like. It was like.
and then you
rounding
said,
in Excel.
yeah.
It
And
was
then
a
you said
rounding
we'll just
in Excel.
drop a quiz, which I'm fine with that. I don't mind that.
8 times 6. What's 8 times 6 is 48. Yeah, you guessed it. 8 times 6 is 48. No, that's just because Excel
Oh, okay.
This is not 6%. This is 6.3% or something like that.
Oh, so we have room. We could drop 2, 3 quizzes.
that's not.
No, that's not. That's not what you're implying.
The Excel rounding has nothing to do with dropping, but I wouldn't worry because yes, you can drop 1, 2, and trying to make the quizzes easier, and 3, the final will be key to your grade because it'll be a large part. And I'll tell you also the way I'm constructing the final is as I'm going through the quiz questions each week. I'm finding a quiz question, putting it on the quiz, and I'm just making a note of a very similar question for the final. So, study the quizzes, and you'll be good. You won't have any problems.
Good advice.
Study quizzes, and everybody be happy. All right, see you next week.
See you next week.